All right, welcome back. New York City's mayor is doubling down on his threats to arrest Israel's prime minister when he arrives here in the Big Apple for the annual UN General Assembly. Take a listen.
I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu belongs in The Hague. He's a war criminal who has been charged by the International Criminal Court. Whatever the law allows me to do in New York City, that's what we will do, but we won't be writing our own laws to that end. That's an active conversation with our legal department in seeing what the prospects are we have here in our municipality.
And there's more. Let's go ahead and bring in John Yoo, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, law professor at UC Berkeley. John, take a listen to this. There was more. The mayor actually went on to call him an architect of genocide. Take a quick listen.
When it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu, we're speaking about someone who's the subject of an international criminal court arrest warrant. And he's the subject of this arrest warrant for alleged crimes against humanity, for war crimes, and he's the architect of the genocide against Palestinians in Gaza as Israel's prime minister. These are not facts of my personal assessment, they are facts of public record.
Facts of, sounds like an open and shut case to me. What about you, John?
Well, I think the mayor needs to read the Constitution and the laws of the United States first before he starts throwing out baseless accusations of genocide and violating international law. Put aside for that, I think personally that Israel has every right to defend itself and has been doing so consistent with the laws of war. But this is a question of the sovereignty of the United States, which the mayor apparently does not believe in. First, the United States and Israel are not signatories to the ICC, so they're not bound by it. Second, under our Constitution, as interpreted by the Supreme Court repeatedly, states and cities cannot interfere with the federal government's, Washington, D.C.'s control over foreign policy. And on this score, I have to bring in my own personal experience. After the 9/11 attacks, the Bush administration, and I was an official of the Justice Department, we participated with Congress to pass a law that prohibits any official in the United States from cooperating with the ICC. So what Mayor Mamdani is calling on is for the officials of New York City, including himself, to violate federal law. So in the end, it's not Netanyahu who should be arrested and investigated. I'm not trying to exaggerate here. The mayor is violating the American Servicemen Protections Act passed in 2002, and the Justice Department should be investigating him. And the president under that law is authorized to use all necessary means to prevent any American or ally from being handed over to that court. So if Mayor Mamdani wants to spend a lot of time dealing with FBI agents and the Justice Department investigators, well, he just started that. He just launched that whole process for himself and the residents of New York City.
But he's a savvy guy, right? You don't get elected mayor of the biggest city in the world if you're a dummy. So what is this? It's just some kind of a political catcall for him?
Yeah, I don't know if I can add more than what you've heard from other political analysts and guests who've said that Mayor Mamdani is appealing to this large sort of socialist-friendly base of young people in New York City who are becoming increasingly, I'm afraid, anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. But the question is he acting consistent with the law of the United States? And he is not, and he should be investigated by the Justice Department, by the Trump administration because of that.
President Trump weighing in on Truth Social just a moment ago. He writes, Benjamin Netanyahu will not be arrested in any way, shape, or form while in the United States of America. So there's that. John, I want to ask you while we have you about this incendiary device planted at this federal building here in New York earlier this morning. Take a listen to Tom Homan. He was on with Sandra top of the hour.
President Trump has said 1,000 times, we will not stand by and let anybody violate the law, especially when it comes to domestic terror acts like this or attacks against ICE officers. Attacks against ICE officers up over 1,400%. Zero tolerance. President Trump told me this himself. Zero tolerance.
What's your response to that, John?
Well, it is an obvious violation of federal law to try to bomb a federal building. It's 20 years at least in prison. Again, this brings me back to other government service. I was working in the Senate when the Oklahoma City bombing occurred, and we ratcheted up the penalties for these kinds of attacks. But most importantly, I would urge that the Trump administration investigate to make sure this is not part of some kind of wider conspiracy that's not connected with Antifa and other far left protests may be inspired by the kind of chatter you're hearing about, right, the United States and Israel committing war crimes, or the United States violating its own laws or constitutional rights, which I think are exaggerated and untrue, but might be leading to some kind of criminal conspiracy in the country to attack federal officers and buildings.
And a scary moment here in the city for civilians today. John, we got to leave it there. Thanks for taking time with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.